So, the Lumix S9. Before we actually dive into this video, I do want to just be completely transparent with you guys. Lumix did send me this camera for a sponsored social media post, but this video itself is not being sponsored, which means this is my true, honest opinion, both good and bad, about the Lumix S9 right here. So that being said, let's dive in this video here and talk about whether or not I personally think this camera is good for content creators, photographers, videographers in 2024 and 2025. I've had this camera for about a month now, and I have had the opportunity to take it out on a few different shoots with me and kind of just mess around with it and kind of get a feel for it both photo and video wise. For about the last 3 weeks, I've been using this camera for all of my Instagram reels, and my latest YouTube video was actually shot on this camera. So this video isn't going to be a super deep dive on all of the technical stuff. I'm just going to be covering my first initial thoughts on this camera and what I like about it so far and what I don't like about it so far. So let's talk about 3 things I like and 3 things I don't like about this camera. The first thing I noticed initially right when I unboxed this was just the size and how compact it is compared to something like my Sony a7 III, which I'm filming this video on. As someone who's used to carrying around a big setup with my Sony a7 III body, my 24-70 lens, I have a lens adapter for the lens to go on my body. It's just really, really big, and my first initial thought about this when I pulled out the box was just how small and compact it was, and honestly, it feels like a toy camera in comparison to my a7 III. And when I say toy camera, I don't mean that in a bad way. This thing might be a lot smaller than my Sony, but it still packs a ton of professional grade features. A few of my favorite of those professional grade features are going to be the 24.2 megapixel full frame sensor, the ability to shoot 4K footage at 30 FPS, and the ability to shoot vlog footage. And I know 30 FPS at 4K isn't necessarily the best for 4K, like obviously you might want 60 or 120, but as someone who primarily just shoots YouTube videos for fun and short videos such as Instagram Reels, I don't see this being an issue in the future. Obviously, if you're shooting big budget video projects, this probably isn't gonna be the camera you will want to use, but for the majority of content creators, I feel like that won't be an issue. Another one of my favorite features is going to be the free tilting touchscreen LCD monitor right here. As someone who hasn't had one of these screens for honestly probably 6-7 years now at this point, going back to having a screen that can tilt like this is a game changer. A lot of the videos I do shoot are going to be front facing like this, so having the ability to flip the screen like this to make sure I'm properly lined up in the frame is huge. For example, when I was setting up my Sony for this video right here, I kind of had to guess where I was going to be in the frame. I had to do some test shots and hit record and then come sit in my chair and kind of see where I was lined up in the frame before I actually started recording the video. With this screen, I could just flip it around and see where I was lined up in the frame and make any adjustments instead of having to go back and forth between my chair and the camera. And one more favorite feature that I have about this camera is going to be the 5-axis image stabilization. I think this is going to be a game changer when shooting handheld video. Just knowing that and having that in the back of my mind when I am out shooting handheld video is going to be a big game changer for me, because one thing I personally find when I'm shooting on my Sony, for example, when I'm shooting handheld, it is extremely bumpy. All right, and now it's time for 3 things that I honestly do not like about this camera. All right, the first thing I'm not a huge fan about this camera is there is not a grip on the front right here. As someone who is used to having a front grip right here, it honestly kind of makes me feel like I'm gonna drop it. On the back, there is this little grip right here. It's not super big, but it is better than nothing. And I know there are grips you can get that you can mount on the bottom right here that loop around to the front. So I think I am gonna be looking into that, but not having a grip on the camera itself is kind of annoying. Another thing I don't really like is there actually isn't a viewfinder on this camera. So if you look on the back here, there is no viewfinder to be found. I'm assuming the reason why they didn't include one in the design when they're making this is just to simply make it as compact as possible. And as someone who shoots on a Sony, I don't use my viewfinder a ton, but just having the flexibility to have one does make a difference. And one more thing I don't really like about this camera is that it only has a cold shoot, not a hot shoot. I don't think this will make a huge difference for me personally, but I know a lot of other people may want to use something like a flash. And with this only being a cold shoot, you will not have the ability to do that. I personally typically only mount a microphone on top of my camera, and there is a mic port right here, so that won't be an issue, but if I ever wanted to use something like a flash, that will be an issue. Overall, I think this is a great camera for both the size and the price. This thing typically retails around $1,800 with the 20-60 lens. I would classify this as an entry-level full frame camera for content creators. I think it's gonna be good for both simple short form video and simple long form video such as YouTube. I'm honestly not sure yet if I would use this for commercial photo work or commercial video work. want to do some more deep dives and really kind of push this thing to the limits before I truly decide that. So here's the million-dollar question. Do I think the Lumix S9 could replace my $3,000 Sony setup in certain situations? And honestly, I do. I can 100% see myself bringing this on hikes when I don't want to lug around my big setup. When it really comes down to it, I think this camera is fun to use and it honestly inspires me to create. And at the end of the day, that is the most important thing. Create with what inspires you to create. And if you guys do find this type of content helpful and entertaining, it would mean a lot to me if you could subscribe to the channel. I make educational videos, trip recaps, and photo vlogs, and really just anything about photography and travel in general. I also have my own community of photographers called Capital Photography. Capital Photography is a community of photographers, for photographers, by photographers. We have coaching calls, course modules, presets, guides, and more, all to help you elevate your photography and take it to that next level. If you're watching this before January 1st, 2025, I'm actually running a discount. You can use the code NY20 at checkout for 20% off your monthly subscription. But yeah, with that being said, that is gonna wrap up this video. I hope you guys all had a great Christmas, great holiday season, finish out the year strong, and I hope 2025 is your best year yet. Keep shooting, keep creating, and I'll see you guys in the new year. Peace.